Welcome back to Empowered with Dr. Lawrence. Today we're talking about a subject that impacts nearly everyone on the planet. At some point in time, you've asked yourself, am I enough? I know I have. Well, I've discovered that there are three contributing factors to the am I enough question, and today we're going to take a deeper dive into this topic. So what are they? Your emotions, your thoughts, and your actions. They impact not only how you view the world, but how you live it. I want to introduce a scripture that has drastically changed my life. Look, I've been successful in my relationships and in business, but I wanted more and found myself moving from success to significance. The scripture that unlocked my life, Isaiah 61. What it says is that he sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prisons to them that are bound. So in Isaiah 61:1, I found purpose. Every business encompassed this man thing. Heal the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty to the captives, open the prison to the bound. What does that mean? Well, let's dive into that. Healing the brokenhearted deals with people that are suffering the reality of agreeing with the enemy. He wants to steal, kill, and destroy. Well, how does he do it? 3 Ds. He will distract you, disappoint you, and discourage you. The second you fall to any one of these tactics, he will try to destroy your hopes, your dreams, and it happens without notice. You need to study for a test, but you get this text message. They start blowing up. Someone sends a funny reel and you get distracted. Boom. And before long, now it's time to go to bed. You do poorly on the test and here comes this flood of negative thoughts. Am I stupid? Why did I take that call? I know better. Why do I keep failing at this? I can't believe I ... See, agreements with statements like this disappoint. The danger is that agreement with those thoughts is the gateway to stealing, killing, and destroying. Why? Well, you agree with the negative thoughts and you're now discouraged. You don't try for your dreams anymore. He's stolen your imagination. Your imagination is an ecosystem of hope. You look at the natural instead of the supernatural. You start killing your own dream. Brokenhearted people have agreed with whatever mountain, whatever obstacle is standing in their way that says they can't do, they can't have, or they can't be something that they really desire. So how do you get beyond brokenheartedness? Well, you agree with the word. Say what God says. Learn not to react in your emotions. Look, when I was a young executive, I went through training. And you would literally sit in a room full of your peers and you sit on this stool in front of the group and they would give you feedback on a problem that you brought up. They would ask questions and you had to answer honestly. Then they give you feedback and sometimes their feedback would cut, but all you could say is thank you. They might say the nicest things about you or they might, give you some brutal, honest feedback and sometimes hurtful feedback. Okay, but all you can say is thank you. You learn quickly to control your emotions that the feedback brings up. You can choose to be offended. You'll be called out, but you can choose to be offended. Or you could choose to grow. Well, here's the cheat code. When you feel strongly about something, good or bad, sit back for a second and choose how to respond. Is this emotion generating a response that's building me up or is it tearing me down? More importantly, which one am I agreeing with? Jesus said that my sheep hear my voice and a stranger's voice they will not follow. Look, notice I've not said anything about comfort. Most growth is uncomfortable at first. The first time I processed an issue in front of this group, I was nervous. I was a little bit scared. I had no training at being vulnerable, but I stuck it out and I matched that emotion up against the word. Now I do a way better job of controlling my emotions. They don't open the gate to brokenheartedness. The second thing is proclaiming liberty to the captives. Liberty is a thought process, a state of being, if you mean. What I mean by that is if you're now dealing with a belief system. The literal definition of liberty is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authorities or one's way of life, behavior, or political views. Another version says that it's the power or scope to act as one pleases. So what about liberty? Liberty is a thought process, a state of being. It means you're now dealing with your belief systems. The word literally means a state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, the behaviors, or your political views, right? Another version says that it's the power or scope to act as one pleases. Literally, liberty deals with control. We often think of rights. My rights are infringed upon. The control I'm talking about that's much stronger is your belief system. I'm not enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not athletic enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough, fine enough. The sad part is that we all do it. It's the gateway to comparison. And that's a gateway to the land of not enough. Nah, no, thank you. I'll pass on that. We enforce this with people around us. Well, you might. I don't. I don't allow people around me that insist on enforcing a narrative that I'm not enough. Sure, I have shortcomings. We all have shortcomings. But there's a difference between constructive criticism and a destructive dialogue. Constructive criticism should come from someone that's mastered where you're trying to go. Their feedback always comes with a roadmap. Oh, you want to lose weight? You want to stop slicing? You want to get faster? You want to speak better? Well, I noticed that you ... You may want to consider XYZ. And I'm not talking delivery either. A lot of people miss solid instruction or feedback because it's packaged in a way that they don't like. That person may have mastered your particular issue and they may give it to you raw. My point is, don't miss your mark because of how they deliver. What are they delivering? Is this person demonstrating a mastery of what they're saying? What most people get is the superlative soup sandwich. You're to this, or you always that. Look, here's the problem. There's no real roadmap to a better environment. The most oppressive restrictions are the ones that we impose on ourselves. The negative voices in our head. Our emotions are really important here in your thought process because they heavily enforce your thoughts. Remember, your emotions, your thoughts, and your actions. We live in a society that demands that we live in an unregulated emotional state. How can you possibly be free or live free if you're always reactive? Well, you can't. Emotions impact how we think, and our thoughts impact our actions. Our actions shape the direction of our life. Look, therapy helps you regulate your emotions. Cool. Coaches help guide your actions. But the only way I've known to truly be free in my thoughts, look, so that a man think as he is. Liberty starts in your thoughts. The only way to control or regulate your thoughts, you got to figure out who's controlling your thoughts. God said you're made in his image. Enough said. He's perfect and you're made in his image. So how can you be less than? How can you be not enough if you're made in his image? Well, you can't. When you align your thoughts with the truth, liberty happens. Spud Webb was 5'6". Let that sink in. 5'6", and he played in the NBA amongst all these 7-foot centers. The fact is that he was short. The truth is, though, he could dunk. My man had crazy handles, and he had that dog in him. You know, he made his impact in the NBA. So you could do this too. To accomplish these types of things, you gotta look past your shortcomings and focus on your dreams. You got to focus on the life that you've imagined and go work for it. Has Spud told himself that he couldn't do it or overlooked his love for the game because somebody told him he was short? He wouldn't have stood out. I believe many people forego the life that they want, the dreams that they want to pursue because of an improper thought process. We are all made in the image of God, which means that we can think and ultimately speak like him. There is no lack in God, so don't let there be lack in your life. That's the key. You got to hyper focus on what the Bible says. It changes your environment. Like seriously, if you consciously focus on what God says about the matter, before long, your perspective will change and you'll better manage your emotions. They'll stop imprisoning you. If you don't like how you feel, change your thoughts, change your words, change your actions. They're all intermingled. See, liberty starts in the mind. Liberty is one in the mind because once your thoughts change, your emotions and your actions have no choice but to change. So what about opening the prisons to them that are bound? This has to do with your physical body. Yes, your physical body can be behind bars, but prison to me is things like addictions to porn, to food, to drugs, to bad thought processes. Addiction by definition, is a compulsive, chronic psychological need for a habit-forming substance, behavior, or activity with harmful physical, psychological or social effects that cause well-defined symptoms like anxiety or irritability when you try to stop. Now that's a mouthful. We typically tend to think of addiction just as drugs. Well, if we apply this definition, it applies to so many aspects of our life. TV, our responses to societal events like breakups and disagreements and failures, food, relational moments. What we're really talking about with addiction is poor coping mechanisms to life's moments. The reality of these moments is that our response has you trapped in such a cycle that it becomes damaging to break. There's a lot of shame that happens here. You crave something, right? You know, this is the response to how I feel. I break up with my boyfriend. I'm going to eat ice cream. Well, here come these emotions again. You don't want to partake in the thing. You know it's bad for you, but you end up doing the thing. And then you feel euphoric for a minute, thinking you're going to feel euphoric, and then bam. What you end up with is this overwhelming guilt. How do you break out of this? It starts back with better managing your thoughts and your emotions. Because keep in mind, your emotions control your thoughts or have a heavily influence on your thoughts. When your thoughts heavily influence your actions, it's not a problem. So when we're doing things that we don't want to do, addiction, drugs, I'm trying to overcompensate for something. Well, the way out of that, the way you break free out of that, it starts with your thoughts. If you don't understand how to properly handle your emotions, again, this is where therapy comes in. But if you don't properly know how to handle your emotions, your thoughts have no choice unless you line them up with a higher power, right? When we focus on our emotions and we focus on our thoughts, we move then into better controlling our actions. So what do we do to start? Well, we start with what you don't want to do. Funny story, true story. At one point in time in my life, I was 270 pounds. And I'm not the tallest guy in the world, and 270 pounds of me was not ideal. It wasn't cool. It wasn't a good look. And I remember going to my doctor in my annual checkup, and what she told me was, you needed to do better. You're down a pathway that's not going to end well for you, right? And so I made this commitment. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to do better. I'm going to, I was in shape, 4% body fat at one point in time when I was in the military, and I was actually cool. So I set out to go and lose weight. Now, the end of the story, I lost almost 40 pounds. But if I'm gonna be honest with you, it was hell. So what did I have to do? Well, I realized that for me to lose weight, I had to break up with my connection with my coping mechanisms. When I would get frustrated or things didn't work out my way, I would eat. And I eat the things that felt good, fried food and sweets. I mean, I was like the donut king around here. You heard the Lion King. No, I was the donut king. And so, but that was an improper response to my emotions, right? I had to center around my thoughts. Oh, dude, you're never going to lose this weight. Oh man, you're a failure. Oh, you mess around and eat the donut. That shame cycle we just talked about, it was real. I don't want to eat this. But I feel so bad. I deserve it. I should feel good. And I go eat the donut. Now I feel like a failure. Man, you ain't gonna lose this weight. You can't even start eating donuts. So I had to change those thoughts. I wouldn't allow myself to let those things come out of my mouth. I started focusing on the reality of what I wanted to be. And to be completely transparent, I took down the pictures when I was in the military and the 4% body fat. That person's gone. I imagine how I would fit in my clothes. I would imagine how I looked in my suits. And so when those thoughts came out, I would literally say out loud, I disagree with that. Not only am I 240 pounds or 235 pounds, this has no power over me. And it seems cliche and all of that, but the reality of it is I took aggressive actions with my thoughts. Okay. And about a week or so into this, Friday came, something, I don't even remember what it was, the structure point, but I remember what happened. I remember where I was. I even pulled into the donut shop. And I literally put the car in park and said, I'm not doing this. And I drove out. Now that was a big deal for me. And you think, man, he's tripping over a donut. Yeah, Yeah, it could be donuts, it could be alcohol, it could be weed, it could be drinking, it could be sex, it could be any of the things that we use to make ourselves feel better. Well, I aligned my thought process around the idea that I was going to accomplish this goal, that this envisioned version of me. By the time I went back to the doctor, I was going to be, 30, 40 pounds down. I saw the response. Oh, wow. What did you do? And fast forward 6 months, that's exactly what happened. Oh, wow. What did you do? Well, I kept my word. And that was something that I'm proud of. And although, it may be comical to you when we're talking about donuts, but this is the same thing that happens with people with porn. It happens with drugs. You have to make the decision that you're going to change. Prison is a physical thing. Like, these are things that physically impact us. Another thing that I did, and it's comical with the donuts, because I really did like donuts like that. I had to eat better. I read books on folks that, again, I read a book by this individual that lost 100 pounds. Well, he broke down the science of behind bread and rice. You have unbleached rice and rich rice. And what he said, that sounds good. That's a marketing thing. But what it is, they stripped all the nutrients out of it. So you just basically eating preservatives. Then you watch these documentaries and they leave a French fry on the ground. A year later, it's still on the ground. Ants don't even mess with it. If ants ain't going to eat it, why would you eat it? So then I became aware. Right. So I stopped having this emotional connection with food. The inverse happened. So instead of craving my favorite food, not to put any, particular chain on blast, but whatever was my favorite food, I began to look at that differently. I was almost offended. You ride around and lunchtime, you smell all this stuff. I got offended. And so it changed my actions. My actions was I started preparing my own food. I started intermittent fasting, and that means, I broke the hold on me. And was it difficult? Man, absolutely. 100%. I'm not saying any of this is easy, but what I am saying is, if you want to improve your emotions, if you want to improve your thoughts, if you want to improve your actions, because they're all intermingled, they're all the catalyst of being free, you have to put the work in. Free people, free people. So I'm no longer bound by my belly. I'm no longer bound by this anger or this perception that I'm not enough, because I don't allow my thoughts to go there. I align my thoughts with saying that I'm a creator. I can create the environment that I want. And so I'm going to close today, and I want to leave you with this. My roadmap to freedom started with the word. So I would encourage anybody to start with the word. Spend time, have a relationship with God. That's where power comes from. Your gifts make room for you. So the things that you want to accomplish in this world, they're possible. But it starts with your thoughts. So that's all I got for today, guys. Thank you for joining with me. Thank you for listening with me. And, if it resonated with you, send this to somebody that needs to hear this message. And until next time, this is Empowerment with Dr. Lawrence. So have a good day. Thank you.